Hey everyone, it is Mr. Vargas here looking to help out Math 3 with homework 8.3, focusing on parabolas and graphing them using standard form notation. Okay, so we've got, in class we learned about two types of parabolas. We've got the vertical parabolas that go up and down. Those are signified, or we can rewrite those in this format where it's x minus h quantity squared is equal to 4p times y minus k. Remember that when we solve for p, if it ends up being a positive number, something greater than 0, your parabola will open up. When you get something that's less than 0 for p, or a negative number, it's going to open down. Also, just a quick little note, our vertex here is h, the opposite of h and the opposite of k. hk is your vertex when we have it in this form. Vertex. Okay. Similarly, horizontal parabolas, you've got y minus k, quantity squared is equal to 4p times x minus h. You'll notice that when we get a horizontal parabola, we are squaring the y term, and when we are getting a vertical parabola going up and down, we're squaring the x term. Awesome. Here, if p, we solve for p and it is greater than 0, that's going to open up to the right. And then here, if p is less than 0, that will also, that will open up to the left. Okay, something interesting to note here is that my x is over on the right hand side, but we still want to utilize the vertex h comma k as my vertex. So coming from here, opposite of h and opposite of k, that's going to be my vertex. Without further ado, let's look at two of the homework problems. In particular, I wanted to talk about number 6. Alrighty, we've got this thing right here, and we've got a fraction being multiplied by something y plus 3 squared is equal to x minus 3. I don't like fractions, and they make things really funky, so let's actually go ahead and multiply this whole side by negative 8 over 1, or just negative 8. Whatever I do to one side, I need to do to the other side, so I'm going to multiply it by negative 8 over there. Sweet. This cancels out here, and since these were being multiplied together, this just cancels out nice and neat, and we can bring down the y plus 3 squared, and that's going to be equal on the right hand side. Make sure you use the distributive property. Negative 8 times x is negative 8x, and then you have negative 8 times negative 3, and that's plus 24. Cool. It almost looks like this is in our horizontal form, y minus k squared, 4p. We just need to factor something out here to get x minus h. So left side's good to go. Right side, though, we can actually factor out a negative 8 from both of those. And that would get negative 8 times x minus 3. And there we go. Now we've got something to work with. My vertex, pretty easy to find. My vertex is going to be the opposite of h. So, negative opposite of negative 3 is 3. And then the k, opposite of positive 3, is a negative 3. And there we go. That's where my vertex will be, at 3, negative 3. Next thing we want to do is solve for p like we learned in class. You go ahead and you take this term right here, negative 8, in front, and you set it equal to 4p. Solving for p would get me negative 2. Dividing both sides by 4. Negative 8 divided by 4 would be negative 2. So p is negative 2. What does that tell me about my parabola? Well, since we're working with a horizontal parabola, it is horizontal since the y is being squared. I'll just put a little note since it was y squared. So it's horizontal, and since this this p is -2, that means it's going to open up to the left. Okay, with that said, p also describes the distance between your focus, your vertex, and your directrix. Absolute value of p is equal to -2, which is equal to 2. So that means all of your key components, your vertex, your focus, and your directrix will have a space of 2 in between them. Let's draw a quick graph over here and get started with the vertex 3, -3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, my vertex is right there at 3, -3. Now I know my shape goes to the left, so what I would do is I would count, using my p-value, I would count to the left that many spaces, which is 2, and this point is going to be your focus. Remember, the focus is always on the inside. Focus on inside a parabola. And the directrix is on the outside. Just a little side note for us. Okay, so I count 2 spaces to the left, 1, 2, and that gets me the location of my focus. So the focus has a location of 1, -3. My vertex was, what was that? It was 3, -3. Okay, my directrix now, we can find that out. Let's go to the right instead, 2 spaces, and that's going to go through this point right here. I can draw my dashed line, my dashed vertical line. That's kind of off. Alright, and this is my directrix. My directrix has the equation of this line, this vertical line. It is x equals 5 for my vertical line. So I can write that over here. X equals 5. And then the last thing that your paper also requires is the axis of symmetry. And that would be the line that cuts through the middle of the vertex and focus, goes right through here. I can draw that out, I guess. I'll do it in blue. Okay, that's my axis of symmetry. Abbreviate that to save some time. And the equation of that line would be y equals -3. So let me write that here. Y equals -3. Okay, we've got the 4 components. Now let's go ahead and make our parabola. In order to do that, I'm actually going to table out a point. So let me go back to this original equation right here. I'll rewrite it as y plus 3 squared is equal to -8 times x minus 3. Alright, and now you want to think about what value could you replace in for x so that you get a perfect square on the right hand side. What I'm thinking is -8 times a -2. What if this became a -2? That would make positive 16. And we know positive 16 is a perfect square. So let's go ahead and replace my x with something that would make this -2. I think that would be a positive 1, because 1 minus 3 would be -2. So let's see what happens when I replace my x with 1. Do that over here. I've got y plus 3 squared equals -8 times 1 minus 3. Let's solve for y there. Get y plus 3 squared still is equal to 1 minus 3 is -2 times -8 is positive 16. Awesome. Now I can square root both sides, and you get y plus 3 is plus or minus 4. Okay, so let's solve it 2 times. Subtract 3 on both sides. Wow, those are some bad 3's. Okay, so that means you have y equals, okay, positive 4 take away 3 would be 1. And then if you did negative 4 take away 3, that would get you a -7. Okay, we've got 2 points we can graph. Let's go do that and make our parabola. Alright, let me fill in a few more lines on my grid here. Okay. Alright, and we had the points 1, 1, and then we also had the point 1, -7 right there. Cool, and we can now draw our parabola. It looks something like this. This is just a sketch. Remember, if you wanted to find better parabola, you could just try to get some more points. There you go. That's good enough for that. Alright, I also want to talk about number 8. And I'm just going to set this one up for you guys and then let you go through the process of graphing it. But for number 8, we had to do something a little bit sneaky. We actually needed to complete the square to get this in the appropriate form. So the first thing that I noticed is I have an x squared. So I want to try to make it look something like this. X minus h squared equals 4p times, y minus k. I want to get it in that form. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take all of my y stuff and my extras, and I'm going to move it over to the other side. So now I have x squared minus 6x. I add 18y over to the other side, and I also add 27 over to the other side. Okay, cool, we are almost there. And now this next step involves something called completing the square. It's super simple once you get some practice with it. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this value right here on the left. This is like my b coefficient, and I'm going to cut it in half, and then I'm going to repeat that twice. So half of -6 is -3, and I'm going to repeat that same thing twice. Okay. What I did though, implicitly, was I actually added a number to this side of the equation so that I could factor it into a perfect square. And if you notice, -3 times -3 is a positive 9. So what I did sneakily was I added 9 to the left side. This x squared minus 6x plus 9 can now be factored into this. But if I add 9 to the left, I also need to add 9 to the right in order to balance out my equation. Okay, combine like terms, so I've got 18y plus 36 now, and now I've got x minus 3 squared equals, can factor out an 18 there, and you'd get 18y plus 2. Alright, now this looks like something that is in our standard form that we know. You can then find the vertex, you can then find the focus, you can find your p-value, which will help you get your focus and your directrix, and you can also find the axis of symmetry. Alright, I'm going to cut this video from there. It went a little bit long. So, good luck on the rest of the assignment, and we'll see you in class.